Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating 5 bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. DUANE the Great Writer and Seer.
This real side experience would begin with me in my former UK physical level house recreated. A rather frequent feature of real side experiences as shared by myself and others, and where our recreated houses generally will represent the consciousness, that as we go through the creational process, every simulated situation and lifetime will be affected through the ideas we create via the body-vehicle mechanics, or the ideas as created by others we have agreed to. The ideas will be stored as the consciousness, from which affected also are the body forms, which render these ideas as the simulation we then experience. And as the lifetimes go by, every idea we ever have created or agreed with that has affected them will be retained as an ever-expanding consciousness database. And from the inception of the free will idea creating a secondary self, as this then results in a removing from the nowness of our real awareness true being positions to this secondary created position, a secondary position that becomes predominant and where the real awareness position is forgotten. So this represents a complete embracing of the creation, the secondary personal self-consciousness, and the entirety of its construct, where we now are holding to every idea it comprises of, as opposed to simply experiencing as we do, but then letting the ideas that have generated the experiences go. We become then the effect of the consciousness in its entirety, including the idea agreements and attachments from previous lifetimes beyond conscious realization, that we then are the unconscious effect of the vast bulk of the consciousness that we are oblivious of, that being the subconscious. The moment will come when we are to face the consciousness in its entirety and release its every idea, that we no longer are bound to its effects, and where ultimately, as this process is completed, We no longer are resigned to a creation, for in a creation we must remain should we hold to any ideas, and therefore subject ourselves to the corresponding effects. The recreated physical level houses then, representing the consciousness as they do, will comprise of everything that are our consciousness constructs, and many an experience has been shared, whereas we go about our consciousness facing and releasing, this may be revealed by the decluttering of our real side recreated homes, taking out the trash and so forth. As everything we experience is based on our agreements for other beings to feature, so the idea of them must be agreed to, and so will be present also within our consciousness representing houses. Broadly speaking, the ground floors will reveal where we have agreements extended to others we are conscious of, and the upper floors where agreements and attachments with others are those we are perhaps not aware of, that we are unconscious of. And as we also forge new agreements with individuals as we go about our real side activities, as every idea is its instant effects in actuality, and will therefore feature on the real side, and eventually filter through to the physical as it is maintained, so very often will this be presented with the features, scenes, or individuals we have just formulated agreement with that allows their presence in our experience to be present on the upper floor initially, and then to transition to the ground floor. As the agreement to the ideas maintained will then have the effects impacting on the physical level and in relation to our physical forms in whatever way it might, according to the nature of the idea. For indeed, this real side experience would begin with a new friend Val present in my consciousness representing house, and specifically on the ground floor, indicating a conscious agreement I have with him that he can openly and at any moment feature in my experience, physical level and real side. And in the best kept traditions of a very British stereotype, so I would offer to make him a cup of tea. A few moments would elapse, and now I would be in my bed within my consciousness representing house. Val had long since departed. An interesting experience, that of sleeping on the real side, and I would be made aware of the presence of another being. Whatever it was seemed formless, as though an ethereal essence lacking substance, but the sense of it completely enveloping my body form. On the real side generally, will the real awareness automatically assess the intent and inclination of every being and body type in our midst, assuming the personal self isn't predominating, and the real awareness positions and the impressions it can afford are unavailable. The real awareness is a part of the isness, everything reality. This everything reality then permeates through all consciousness affecting a form and a feature. The ideas affecting every body form we encounter can be determined by the real awareness, including the intent, as intent is as a consciousness installed idea as any other we may create, and where the personal self can be apprised as to any deception, skullduggery, or malice in regards to all those who enter our experiential midst. Evidently I had agreement extended to this ethereal body form or it would have been unable to enter my experience, or indeed my consciousness representing house, but impressions revealed it wasn't in any way ill-intended or had any affiliation with the dark forces. It was, however, an exceptionally creationally powerful being, as impressions further revealed. For indeed, we can develop the consciousness in any way we choose, and effect for ourselves body forms with all manner of capability, and this would be the case here with this ethereal body form. But despite how powerful our body forms might be, and the capabilities we can wield, our creation will be an idea, and this idea can only then impact others if they agree that this can be so, and this then will be the experience potentiality as shared between us and others. Absent of this agreement, and yes, another powerful being may enter our experience, as in reality every being in a simulator has the same idea agreements that are its template, and so in essence every being can enter the experience of any other through a virtue of these shared simulator template ideas, until we release all agreements, that is, and then can consciously choose who enters our midst or not. But if able to be in our presence, further agreement then is required in regards to the precise extent of impact they can have upon us, as absent of the idea that another can harm me, then there can be no simulation where I experience harm at the hands of another. This ethereal being then had agreement from me that it could enter my experience, perhaps an unconscious agreement placed whenever it was that permitted this to be as yet unreleased, but despite its formidable power, it could not exact this on me in any shape or form unless I consciously allowed this, as I lacked additional agreements that enabled the being to do so. But as I said, it was benign in its countenance, enveloping me in its form, and the impressions were that it desired to bestow a gift upon me, and that in return I would be of assistance to it. As we go through the process of awareness, it is so that we must face every idea of creation, and indeed every body form residing within it. For we all are part of an overall collective consciousness, a consciousness we all have embraced and agreed with for the longest time, and as we release the ideas of it, this would include the ideas of every being and body type in addition, and this involves a facing of the ideas as we go about their releasing. So we rather do need adopt the mentality of being open to every experience, as Jeremy would reiterate recently on a real side experience he shared, where we must not have trepidations, where the tap lines we momentarily tangle ourselves in as we face creation are concerned. I would accept the being's proposal, and what followed was something I have experienced before and shared, where certain creationally powerful beings and body types are occasionally motivated to bestow us with abilities, attributes, or additional skills. The real awareness is somewhat limitless in its capabilities, where our simulation inserted body forms are concerned, and so in reality we need not develop abilities through the consciousness that effected our more powerful body forms. However, what I have found is that, if we are for whatever reason removed from our real awareness position, and thus we are denied the unlimited abilities it can afford. If, say, we were emotionally triggered and thus assume the personal self position, we now are far more vulnerable on the real side, as we have only whatever skills and abilities we have developed through the current lifetime consciousness to fall upon. This proposal, then, was that this being would make adjustments to my consciousness that would express as my body forms being more formidable on the real side, even in the absence of my real awareness and unlimited capability standing. And this I would accept to see where it would go, and the scene would switch momentarily to where I would be demonstrating my newly acquired consciousness personal self abilities to my mother, along the lines of being able to manipulate my environment as I saw fit, as I would be destructuring and restructuring it and the various features it contained. Perhaps this would be as an aid to physical level survival also, for another constant theme of real side experiences of late has been that as we become more limitless on the real side through the process of awareness, which involves a releasing of all agreements, many of which present as a limitation in all their forms, everything starting on the real side as it does, but eventually must become so on the physical, that the drawn-out delay of cause-to-effect processing of the time frames as effected through a consciousness onto the physical will have us at some stage catching up with our current level of unlimitlessness as we experience on the real side, which will then serve as a means of heightened physical level survivability. That these consciousness adjustments provided by this being that had the ability to do such, effecting as greater survivability with the isolated personal self, absent of the real awareness on the real side, will eventually also filter through to the physical, and allow us to be more formidable there also in the face of adversity, be it environmental or other body types. As I said, the being, having bestowed this heightened ability upon me through the alterations to my consciousness he had effected, had desired something in return. I would hold up my end of the bargain and find myself now positioned in a vast structure. The being that had maintained an ethereal form now had adopted a body type with the appearance of a human. Something then that afforded ease by which we could engage, and indeed now he would be speaking verbally to me, as opposed to my discerning his offer and gift by virtue of the real awareness, reading his intent and proposal. As it transpired, the vast structure we now were in housed an equally as large volume of various assorted body types, all manner of beings, from one end of multi-dimensional creation to the other, had found themselves here. Impressions revealed that this vast structure represented a form of containment, designed to secure very abrasive and destructive body forms, that they would be unable to impact any others adversely, as was their general inclination. It was as though then a kind of displacement position that the various body types had found themselves within, really by virtue of the effects they had created for themselves through their destructive choices and actions. For we always are the effects of ourselves, our body forms and creational positioning will reflect the design of our consciousness, the ideas that become it through the choices we make. And this then seemed to be in reality self-imposed incarceration, a position by whatever hand had constructed it, maybe the guides or other beings of similar capability had managed the karma of the ill-intended beings it contained and placed them here as an alternative to the effects they would have experienced. But amidst those contained in this position, and it was rather prudent that they remain so, to prevent their disruptions and destructions of others, there was a scattering of other body types who were not abrasive in their life choices and actions, but had for whatever reason found themselves contained in this structure also. Evidently agreements they had taken on, by whatever means this had been so, that effected themselves here, but in reality there was no need for such an extent of displacement for them. And this was my end of the deal, that I was to rescue those that had found themselves contained here also, that these were associates of the ethereal powerful being now in his human form, that despite how powerful he was, his abilities didn't extend seemingly to being able to rescue his associates from this containment position. But the alteration he had exacted on my consciousness would effect as a unique capability within my own body form that allowed that I could liberate his comrades. Everything that transpires between individuals is according to agreement placement between them, be it the villains and the victims, and where interjections or rescues on behalf of the victims are concerned. And so, for whatever reason, the agreements I had to play with, and specifically with the assumption of these abilities as provided me by this being, so I could indeed assume the role of a rescuer of his associates, a role he did not seemingly have extended as available for him to assume. As I said, he was not a deceptor or ill-intended beings, and his motivations here were sincere also, as impressions revealed, and with every interaction with every being, regardless of their inclination and intent, always there is opportunity. And as this being was exceptionally powerful, he may well be a valuable asset in regards to our galactic projects and so forth, that although his only desire was to, at this moment, have his comrades released from this containment position, he may well elect to assist further at a later moment. It's always good to accrue allies, especially powerful ones. What followed was rather difficult to describe, but necessary was it for me to now be tutored by this being in regards to assuming alternative body forms, made possible through the consciousness altering he had afforded me, along with the environmentally manipulating ability I now could exercise, even absent of the real awareness afforded capability. The assumption of forms of such a bizarre nature that they made little sense to my personal self, and were beyond description, but forms that were essential to my ability to extricate his associates. For the entire containment facility comprised of a kind of security measure, where the body types contained were locked within particular frequencies, and the only way to not only breach the facility, but to progress through it and gather up his associates, was by aligning my own body frequency with the frequencies of the containment structure, that as the containment frequencies changed as they would as I proceeded, so my own frequency would have to alter in accordance. And this frequency adjusting was made possible through the alternating of the assumption of the indescribable body forms. For everything at its base state before effected into a simulation is a frequency, including the body types. It follows then that as the body types change, so is the frequency that is affecting them. That through my altered consciousness, so could I lock into particular newly installed frequencies of it and effect a shape shift of my outer form, reflecting whatever frequency I had focused on. This is something that could have been executed via the real awareness that can afford everything we require for every situation and circumstance, but as I said, I had elected to utilize abilities now consciousness developed courtesy of the powerful being, and now I would proceed to execute my assignment. Interestingly, not only did I assume alternate forms, that I exuded the frequency required that allowed my progress, but as I came into a conjunction with the various body forms contained in the facility, I would effectively be allowing them to be liberated from the area they were contained within, as though my frequency at each section was nullifying the frequencies that maintained the body types as unable to move beyond the boundary that each frequency section I entered presented as. And so it was a case of my entering each section, unlocking it through my frequency affecting a body form, then gathering up those that were his associates, encasing them as though within a bubble of the frequency required that I could move them from each section, but a bubble that would act as a kind of a Faraday cage, where all those not within it that I didn't allow access to, those I determined were the ill-intended beings that were to remain in the facility, would be denied and resigned to remain locked within the frequency that contained them. Almost a case of entering a cell with the key, pulling out certain inmates, but slamming the door and locking it before the others could also be liberated. As I said, it was rather hard to describe, but I would continue to sweep through the facility, adjust my frequency that effected as a particular body type, that I could access all areas through the nullifying of each section's frequency containment field, pull all of the powerful beings, associates, into my bubble frequency swiftly, preventing the ill-intended characters from also accessing my bubble, that they would be retained in the frequency that held them captive in their respective sections. As I said, the incarcerated were a wide selection of assorted body types, the kinds associated with ill-intended behaviours, greys, reptilians, insectoids, etc. The beings' associates, however, were of body types that were beyond my current array of personal self-references to describe. And eventually my assignment was complete. I had rescued all of his associates. I had successfully prevented those deserving of their containment in the facility from being liberated, and all of this achieved by virtue of the consciousness adjustments as afforded by the being who had set me this task. A consciousness alteration that had my personal self, even in isolation and absent of the real awareness, unlimited potential afforded capability, far more adept where it comes to survival on the real side, and it will be interesting to see what comes of this. For the experience would end there. I had upheld my side of the bargain, and this creationally powerful being, and including all those that were his associates I had rescued, very likely beings of similar capability, as like tends attract like and so forth, would very much be in the category of established allies, and may indeed have further parts to play in the unfolding situations occurring throughout the simulator, in regards perhaps to the galactic projects and so forth.